Hey, this is John with Smoke Eater Guitars. Our mission is to keep your axe playing its best at all times. On this channel, we'll cover some basic setups all the way up to pro level repairs. I'll show you tips, tricks, even some trade secrets. Our mission is to save rock and roll, one guitar at a time. Tonight we're going to do kind of the next step of after you change the strings. Your next step would be to make sure your string height is correct, which is also called action. So if somebody says you need to adjust your action, the thing that they're talking about here is the string height, how far the string is off of your fretboard. Hey everybody, this is John with Smoke Eater Guitars. We're saving rock and roll one guitar at a time. I want to take a moment to kind of share with you guys what liking and subscribing does for the channel. We do a lot of charity work for new students, for young kids that are trying to learn guitar. A lot of those kids can't afford a real expensive guitar or even the repairs of a starter guitar. So by you liking and subscribing, it helps us keep those costs down. Do your part. Help save rock and roll, one guitar at a time. Players that play a lot tend to like their action a little bit lower because it takes a little bit less effort. Acoustic guitar action set higher. The strings are kind of higher off of the fretboard for several reasons, but the main reason is you don't want any buzz because because they don't have pickups. That buzz is amplified through that sound hole. So you try to get your strings a little bit higher on acoustic guitar to kind of eliminate any kind of buzz sound. Where electric guitars, because you're running through pickups, is a little bit more forgiving with the buzz. You can have it set a little lower, and it's okay because the buzzing that you hear when you're not plugged in kind of go away whenever you plug in if you're set right. We're going to talk about the tools that we're going to need tonight. So again, I know last couple of videos that I posted, I talked a lot of good things about Music Nomad. And the thing I like about Music Nomad is normally they come in kits. And it's kind of everything you need type of kit. This kit is kind of a measuring tool equipment, this black case. It's kind of measuring tools. Now what I keep in here is anytime I get Allen wrenches with new saddles or a new guitar, something that I may use a lot of, I just throw it in this little baggie and keep it in this kit. But tonight what we're going to be doing is we are going to be setting string action. So you're going to need one of these action gauges. All right. I'm going to get in here to the camera so you can see it. This gauge is set on standard on one side, millimeter on the other. I'm going to try to stick with standard tonight, and these are the gauges we're going to be looking at. They run from 0.02 up to 0.14 on this. Try to get it where you guys can see it clear. I don't know if that's eligible or not, or legible or not, but that's really what we're going to use to set our height. So we're going to need this gauge here to set that. We'll need a capo. Remember, this capo is kind of changing when you're playing. It changes the position of your nut. It acts as a nut itself, and that capo will go on one of these frets. And when you're checking string action, you want to put the capo on the first fret. So let me raise this up just a little bit. So we're going to put the capo on the first fret, and this has a rubber end to it, which is set at the same radius as your guitar neck. We talked about that last week. Does it have to be exact? What I did a little bit of research. Some of these are rated, and it'll say this capo will work on a 12 through a 10 radius neck. This particular one will work on a 10 through a 7.25 radius neck. So you want to make sure you get the right capo is the whole purpose of that. So we're going to set that capo right on the first fret, right behind the fret bar. So let me pull this down a little bit, see if you can see this. I'm going to have to bring that guitar over to you. So see how you can see that fret bar? What I'm doing is I'm setting this where it's rests right behind that bar. Okay, so I can still see the bar right here, and it's sitting on top of the wood, just on this side of that bar. What I found when you capo like that, it's a little bit more accurate the closer you get to that fret bar. Let me move it just a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. See the fret bar here and see the capo? So just right behind that capo, or right behind that fret bar on your fretboard, you're going to set that capo, and it's spring loaded. So I squeeze it to open it up, I put it on, and then I release it. It goes right against those strings. All right. So you want to make sure your capo's on the first fret. And then what we're going to do is we're going to measure the action at the 12th fret. So remember, the two dots mark our 12th fret. And just as a reminder on that, why that 12th fret is important, it depends on the scale of your guitar, but the scale of your guitar, the 12th fret should be exactly between the original nut and your saddle. And that should be on a Stratocaster, that's 25.5 inches is the scale length on a Stratocaster. Some are 24, some are 26. This one's 25.5. Baritones are even longer. A baritone guitar has a longer neck to it, so the scale length from the saddle to the bone to the nut is going to be longer. That being said, we're going to measure our string height right here at the 12th fret. Now we're going to use the bar right behind the two dots, right closest to the body from the two dots. The great thing about this little tool here is it tells you on this tool, if you like low action, set your low E at 0.05, set your high E at 0.04. Now on acoustic guitars, it's 0.07 and 0.06. And then of course on a bass guitar, it's 0.075 and 0.065. And that's just for low action. So we're going to talk about electric guitars tonight. So we're going to set the action. I like my action low, and I've set my saddles at the right spot to do this. So before we measure, there's one other tool we got to do. So if we need to make adjustments, we can make those adjustments. So let me adjust my camera to the bridge. Let me get it a little closer so you can see what I'm talking about. Remember, this is our tremolo system, right? Our bridge system. These are saddles. There are, let me get a tool out. I believe this is the right size for this guitar. Yeah. So this is a standard size at a 1/16. And what I'm talking about is these are little Allen wrenches right here. These two little Allen wrenches are on either side of the string on the saddle. So remember, this is called a saddle. What the string comes up and goes over, that's a saddle. All right. So to set the string height on this, what I have to do is I have to set both of these screws up or down depending on which direction I need that to go. And once we get this string done, the low E, we'll do the high E. And then I'm going to show you a couple of different methods of doing the strings in between all of these strings. There is a couple of methods to do that. I'm going to show you what I prefer because I like my strings to be accurate, each one to be accurate. But there's a different way of doing this than what I do. So I'm going to show you both ways. So let's pan out a little bit. I'm actually not going to pan out. I'm going to pan over, and then I'm going to try to get this guitar set where you guys can see it. And I'm going to work from right behind the camera. Let's go a little bit lower. There we go. That's going to be close so you guys can see what I'm doing. So once you get the capo on and you get your tools ready, by tools I mean your Alen Wrench. Now I utilize this Music Nomad kit that comes with pretty much every tip and then a screwdriver set. For these saddles, they don't take a whole lot of effort, so I just use the bar and the little adapter. So you're going to need this Alen Wrench set. Now you could use these style Allen wrenches that you can find in any hardware place. If you're going to use these styles, what I would recommend is buy you two sets, one metric and one standard, because depending on what guitar you're going to be working on, it may have a metric, it may have standard. So buy two. If you have more than one guitar, chances are you're going to need both sets. So you could utilize these type of Allen wrenches. I recommend buying the little luthier kit from I'm sorry, it's been a long day for me. Music Nomad. So what we're going to do is we have our tools ready. We're set to go. Remember, I believe in a clean bench, so make sure you don't have things just laying around. We're going to take this tool and we're going to go to the string to see where we're at. Now it's really hard to see with this camera, but what I'm looking for, each one of these numbers have a line associated with it. This is 0.05, and that's where I want to be. This line underneath it, how I measure that is once I put this behind the string, I look to see if I can see that line or not. If I can see that line, if it's above the line, I need to lower my action. If I can't see that line, it's below the line, I need to raise the action. This one, I can tell you, is right dead on to 0.05. Now, for you newer players or players that are just getting into working in tech on your own guitar, you're teching your own guitar, to get to 0.05, it takes a lot more than just setting that action to where it'll play correctly. We have to set the neck properly. We have to set the action, of course, the neck relief, the saddles, to get it to play well without a whole lot of buzz at 0.05 is tough. So what I'm going to recommend is that if you're just starting on working on your guitars, go to 0.06. Right? Now, if you only have a metric, what I'm talking about is 1.25 millimeters would be considered low on the low E. But I recommend, if you're new to setting up a guitar, go to 1.5 millimeters first. But again, we're going to try to stick with standard tonight. So we're talking 0.05 inches. We call that 50. All right, because it's 50 thousandths. So we're going to set ours at 0.05, which is also commonly called 50. So if I set it on this fret, that's where I'm measuring off of, is this metal fret right here. I can barely see the line, and that means I'm just set. See, I can see way above the 4, and I can't see the 6, but I'm right at that line on 0.05. So that means that this string, this low E string, is set at 0.05, which is where I want it to be. Now, if I was high or low and I needed to adjust that, I would go to my saddle, and if I needed to adjust it, if I needed it to go up, I would tighten the screw clockwise, and that would raise this side. But I need to keep these even, so I'd raise both sides up a little bit and then check it again with my gauge. If I'm too high, I would go counterclockwise. It'll lower that string back down, right? So it takes going back and forth to get it just right. Ballparking string action isn't an option. It needs to be dead on accurate. So on this tool again, when you can see the line, the string is right on top of the line where you can see it, then that means that's what gauge you're at. If you can't see the line, or if the string is even with the line, then you need to raise that action up. If that line is above the string, you need to lower that action. So again, what we are going to do is we would test at the 12th fret on this string, make sure we're right, and actually messing with that action a little bit. I need to lower this just a little bit. So I go counterclockwise on those set screws, and I can see I am still, nope, I'm right dead on it. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the high E string. This is the string way over here, right? I could turn the guitar around to get a clear view, but what I normally do is I use that same tool on that same fret, and I put it up against it without moving the string or anything. I put it up against it, and I could tell right now that this is set at 0.05. I like to keep all my strings set at 0.05. On here it says I can take that low E down to 0.04, but being kind of a player that plays quite a bit, I can tell you some guitars will take that 0.04 really well. Some guitars buzz a little bit. I like to get used to my strings at a certain height, so I'm very comfortable with just setting all of them at 0.05. Does that make sense to everybody? So measure the same exact way. We're going to see where that string comes to the very top of that line. That's going to be the number I'm at. Not when the string runs through the line or under the line, but when it goes right on the top. So I could tell that this is set at 0.05. So we were actually looking in this gap right here, the gap between the fret and the string itself. That's where we're looking for our line. So if our line is visible and the string is sitting right on top of our line, then we're good. If that string is sitting and we can't see the line, then we're bad. We need to take it up a little bit. If we can see the line on top of the string, then we need to raise that string up a little bit. So let me grab a piece of paper so I can kind of better show you on a piece of paper what we're talking about, and I'll draw it big so you can see it. on that gauge, you're going to have a line, and those lines look like staircases like this, and this is an over exaggeration, all right? And then right above those lines, you'll see a 0.02, and then 0.03, and then 0.04, 0.05, 0.06, and then it keeps going. All right, so this is kind of how that tool looks. So what we want to do is I'm going to utilize this as a string. All right. So if we're aiming for this as our this, we'll go with the 5. If we're aiming for 5, if my string is here and I can see that line, then I need to raise that string up. I need to raise that action up. So I go to my saddle clockwise on the 2 set screws on my saddle, and that'll bring that string up. Now, this doesn't mean I'm at 0.05. I can't see the line. I have to go until the string touches the top of that line so I can actually see the line underneath my string. And whenever you can see the line underneath your string, but there's no gap above that line, the string is touching the top of that line, that's when you're set. So if I wanted to go to 6, this I need to raise the string, this I need to lower the string. I'm going to lower that string until I can just barely get it on top of that line. And that's whenever I know I'm set. All right. So if I'm even with that line, truly I'm not set, okay? I have to be able to see that line underneath my string. So really, to set it right, the string has to touch, the bottom of the string has to touch the top of the line. That's how you can tell it's set. So that saddle, let me draw that saddle for you while we're here so you can see what I'm talking about on that too. Now, if you are sitting here watching, really suggest you grabbing a guitar, and that way you can look at your guitar and follow me while I'm doing this. Best kind of cheat sheet you got is your own guitar. So if I'm looking at the side of the saddle on a Stratocaster, that saddle looks like a bent piece of metal that goes like this. All right. Some saddles are just blocks. So if I'm looking at the side of it, it looks like a block, and where your string comes out is about right here and goes on. On this one, the string comes out and goes up above there. This block, on both sides of the block, have the same thing as this twisted metal saddle. And so if you're looking at the top of your saddle, you're going to see kind of the same thing on both of them. This will actually have a little bar here. If you're looking at this, there's going to be a slotted hole here where your string can come out of. And your string comes out and goes over the top of it right here. But on both sides of those strings, there's little set screws. So if I need to bring this string up, goes back to your deal. This is a little spring back here. Anyway, these 2 little set screws is what we raise and lower that saddle with. So if I need to raise that saddle up, I go clockwise on these, and that will lower those screws, which in turn raises the saddle. So we're going to raise that by turning that clockwise. So turning it clockwise raises it. If I turn it counterclockwise, that lowers it. It lowers the string. Does that make sense to everybody? So clockwise raises, counterclockwise lowers. And that's how we set the action on the two E strings. Now I will tell you that I've been doing this for a long time and I've tried different methods of how I set the rest of my strings, how I set the action on the rest of my strings. So I'm going to show you a couple of different methods that I found. If you get this Nomad toolkit, it comes with radius gauges. And the number on each side is the radius number that is this curve has. I can tell you on this guitar, I have a 9.5 inch radius. So let me explain what radius means. If you took this angle and made a complete circle with that angle, make a complete circle, if I just kept going like this and made a circle, that circle would end up being 9.5 inches in diameter, right? If I took a 7.5 inch, that's a smaller or a higher, if you would. The radius, the two ends are lower from the center. It would only be 7.5 inches in diameter. On the 12, the ends are closer to the same as the center. So this would actually be a large 12-inch circle. So that's how they measure this, is a radius. This neck is, the top of that neck board is radius, is rounded. And that number means that's the radius of my fretboard. So I know that this one's set at 9.5 inch radius. So what does that mean? That means when I set my strings, if I set them all at 5, remember I said I like mine all at 5. When I set them all at 5, this radius is going to meet the same as the radius on the fretboard. So let me show you how you can do that without measuring all of, yeah, that's a good angle. Let me straighten that out. Yeah, that's pretty good. So if I know this tool, I'm looking for my 9.5 radius. I've got my two sides set. I should be able to set this on right by the bridge, and all my strings should be touching that 9.5 inch radius. So all my strings, when I pluck them, I should be able to feel that vibration in this metal gauge. That's one way of doing it. I've seen that done many times that way, and it works really well. I think it's actually quicker just to measure your strings all the way across your 12th fret, but this is one way to double check to make sure that your radius is right. This is one type of radius gauge. Let me grab a different type of radius gauge. These are radius gauges. Let me raise this up just a little bit so you can see. These are called understring radius gauges. And this is a 9.5 understring radius gauge. I know this. You can slide. What I do is I put this gauge, the two arms of this gauge, between the 3rd and 4th string, and then you turn it, and you can go here and measure that radius to see if it's right. And this one is right. This is 9.5. So if I take this over by my bridge and I pull up on against the strings and make sure that center bar is directly center between those two strings, my radius gauge should be touching all my strings, and it is. So I know my string height is all the way across good. Now, if I was doing that, let me put this back in. If I was doing this, first of all, I'd take it off this keychain. It's kind of cumbersome to do with the keychain. If I was doing and pulling up on this and I didn't have any, it wasn't touching, let's say the low E or let's say the B string. If it wasn't touching the B string, I know that B string's sitting too high. Again, lower it going counterclockwise until it touches that gauge. It just barely touches that gauge right here. And then you know that string is at the right height. To do this, you need to make sure both of your E strings are set at the right height. And then you can adjust your other ones to it. Now, you will come across sometimes where this string is touching, and you look over here at the low E, and it's not touching. That means this one's too low. So you raise that up. Or this one's, too low, so you raise it up until all three of these strings are touching. And then go over here and do the same thing. If this one's touching and this one's not, I would raise this string up until this one's touching. Or if these two were touching and this one wasn't, it means that this string, the G string, is too high, so I would lower that G string. So it's pretty simple. These tools you can find online, Amazon. You can get them at any guitar place like a Guitar Center. You can order them from StewMac. If you want really good, accurate ones, StewMac or Sweetwater. Sweetwater is a great company to deal with. You can also find them on eBay all the time. They're called understring radius gauges. Understring radius gauges. If you buy the Nomad little luthier gauge kit, they come with these style, and these are top of the string radius. So you put them on top of your strings where the other ones go underneath your strings. So both work great. I'm going to show you how I do it, just so you have a different methods of doing it. In case you do or you don't have these radius gauges. The good thing about the method I'm about to show you is that it doesn't matter what that radius is on that neck. If you set it up this way, it's going to work every time. What we're going to do, we're going to go back to that 12th fret. All right. Remember, this is the bar we're going to set our gauge on. And we're going to go back to this. And we're going to go from one string to the next string. Now, when you're looking at this, you have to put your eye level with this gap right here. So you're going to be nailed down or looking down. Try to go parallel with that guitar, and you want to look right in between the string and the fret to see what level you're at. But you're simply going to go from one to the next, make that adjustment, to the next, make that adjustment, to the next, make that one. Like I said, I like all my strings at 0.05. So I will just go one at a time and make sure all my strings at one are at 0.05. And if I find one that's off, I'll make that adjustment right away. So if I adjust this string, it doesn't affect any of these other strings. Unlike tuning and intonation or adjusting your neck, when you adjust your neck relief, it affects all your strings. When you're tuning a guitar, it could affect all your strings. That's why you have to go down, up and down that neck several times when you're tuning. When you're adjusting the action, one string is independent from the next, from the next, from the next. So I can adjust this one and then go and adjust this one. I don't need to go back and readjust that. It should stay true once I get it set. So that's how we set our action. Pretty simple, pretty easy. To recap, when you're setting action, you need to capo the first fret. You need to have your action tool. You need to have an Allen wrench to raise and lower your saddles. If you are going to use the gauges as a radius gauge to set the rest of them, that's okay. But you, at a minimum, have to manually set with the gauge. With this gauge, we have to manually do at least the low E and the high E. Then we could use our radius tool. Again, I like to do this tool on every string. Since I already have this tool out, I'm already used to bending over, got my Allen wrench set, and it's just as easy just to utilize this on every string instead of having to pull out another gauge and use a radius. So I do it this way. It's not cheating. This is the way most guitar techs set their action. So that's all there is to setting action, setting the string height. All right, that is our lesson for tonight. Again, I have a email for this channel. It's smokeaterguitars@gmail.com. If you guys have any questions, email me. I check it every day. Email me. I'll get back with you. I will talk you through whatever issues you may be having. I'll explain myself a little bit better if I didn't do a good job during the video. And I will be happy to help you guys with anything that deals with guitars, basses, acoustics, whatever you have. I'm here to help you guys learn how to work on your own stuff.